everybody, Sarah here. So today I'm going to be reviewing this book by Mike McEachern. It is a corn snake color guide. Before I do though, please remember to subscribe if you like corn snake content. I put out corn snake content every single week. This is future Sarah recording this. Thank you so much to all of the members who joined this channel. The reason that this is future Sarah is because I recorded that last video a little while ago and I wanted to make sure that I have the most updated list of members. Thank you to Bridget, David, William, Raul, Robert, Amy, and April. You guys have made my day when I saw that I had like this many members on this channel. It just warmed my heart so much. So thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get tears in my eyes. So yes, I just wanted to make sure I had the most up-to-date list. That's why this is recorded very differently from the rest of this video that you're seeing. So thank you. Thank you again. And anybody else who wants to become a member, you can click join under any video. It's $2 a month, and you can go like month by month or just pay for 1 month or whatever you want. You're gonna get exclusive content, which is just gonna be some little videos here and there, sometimes rant videos from me, sometimes just like little show-off videos, like if I get a new snake or if there's something just like little and special snake related that I want to share, I'll share it to members only. And you also get access to any live videos that I do afterwards. I plan on actually doing more live like Q&A videos at some point here. I just have not like gotten to that point yet, but that is coming. I just wanted to let you know I greatly appreciate you guys, and you have just made my day. Like I said, I'm like tearing up. So thank you. Back to other Sarah recording this other video. As usual, I give away every book that I review on this channel after I review it, and last month's was Bill and Kathy Love's book, The Corn Snake Manual, and so I'm going to draw names out of a hat. I actually had a hat this time, and if you get this, then remember it's free shipping in the US. So it looks like Amy Loves. I know Amy has been a longtime fan, so I'm really happy that I actually drew your name on this one. So Amy, go ahead and send me your address, which is at my email address. It's in the description down below. And you're actually going to be getting 2 books for the price of 1 this time, because Sue Willits decided that she did not want the very first book, which I do not blame her. So even though Sue's name was drawn last week, she opted not to get the amazing book that we went over before, the Corn Snake book that actually didn't even have a corn snake on the cover. It had a milk snake on the cover. So anyway, you'll be getting 2 for the price of 1 this time. And anytime that anyone declines a book, we pass that on to the next person. That's just what I'm going to be doing from now on. And if you would like a copy of this book, in fact, this specific copy of this book, this one exactly that I am holding, that I have written notes in, if you would like this book, comment anything down below this video and your name will also go in a hat. It's free shipping in the US, and you still qualify if you're outside the US as long as you're willing to pay shipping for that. Okay, I'm going to jump into the actual review part of this video now, but before I do, I want to mention again that anything that I say in these videos is not meant to attack the actual person that wrote the books. I know that sometimes book reviews can seem a little bit more negative, but it's not a reflection of the person. It's really just a reflection of whether or not I would personally recommend a certain book or not, and just my personal opinions on the book. So please do not take my opinions of a book as a reflection of a person. I'm going to start out by going over the criteria with which we actually judge these books, and those 3 are: number 1, how accurate is the information provided; 2, is it as advertised; and 3, how good is the writing / how easy is it to read and understand. We give the books a number in each criteria and then average that number at the end. So each criteria will get a 1 out of 10, 1 being not so good, 10 being great, and then we will average those 3 at the end to get the final score for the book. So starting out with how accurate is the information. Now, remember, this book was published in 1991. This book was published the year that I was born, so it's over 30 years old. So some of the information is automatically probably not going to be exactly correct, and I will give some examples here. Obviously, we now have over 30 base mutations in corn snakes, and this book really only goes over like 5 or 6 of them. It goes over amel, anery, motley, stripe, and diffused, and it goes briefly over the hypomelanistic A gene mutation. There are a couple of other localities mentioned, such as Okatee and Miami. However, the photo of Miami that they picked is completely different from what we would consider a Miami today. I will go over the quotes and some of the photos in this book at the end if you guys want to see that, but for now I'm just going to do a brief overview and get our criteria and our score down. There are many places where they talk about the Amuray's rat snake and the rosy rat snake both being a subspecies of corn snake. At the time that this was written, that was probably correct information. However, it has been completely changed now. The Amuray's rat snake, also known as the Great Plains rat snake, is no longer considered a subspecies of corn snake. It's considered a completely different species, and the rosy rat snake is actually not even considered a species anymore. Rosy rat snakes are now what we call Keys corn snakes, and they are now determined to just be a species of corn snake that look a little bit different simply because they've been more isolated in the Florida Keys. So due to the age of this, I'm going to give the how accurate is the information a 4 out of 10. It's not that the information is all incorrect. It was correct at the time, but would I recommend this information now? I don't think that I would. Being a 30-year-old book, it's bound to have some issues. We've talked about that in some other older books that we've gone over as well. And a similar thing with this, some of the information that's in it is actually incorrect now when you talk about the taxonomy. The morph information itself is correct, but there's just not very much of it. So it's going to get a 4 out of 10 in criterion number 1. Criteria number 2 is the book as advertised? We've talked about how some books say, oh, the complete guide for whatever, but then they leave out a whole bunch of information, and therefore it's not a complete guide. This book does not call itself a complete anything. It just says a color guide for corn snakes. So in that respect, it's not necessarily wrong, but when we're talking about a color, if you want to call it a morph guide, we do generally expect morph guides to be more extensive than this. It does have correct information for the morphs that it talks about. It does have some historical information as well, but as we saw in the Loves book from last month, they even had a much more extensive morph guide in the back of their very small book that was even more extensive than what you will see in this book. Since that book even had some upgrades later on, we can't really expect this book to be the end-all be-all either. So even though the morph information is correct and some of the historical data is most likely correct, such as when the morph was originated and who proved it out, stuff like that, that stuff is correct, but it's not nearly as extensive as we would expect it to be. I'm also going to give it a 4 out of 10 in criterion number 2. And the last one is how easy is it to read and or understand from an English speaker's perspective? And I would say this is where it gets a little bit of redemption. It does read pretty smoothly. Reading through it was not difficult. Obviously, I sat down and I read it in an afternoon, so it didn't take very long and it was a very easy read. There were a few places though where he even seemed like he didn't quite know what to say or what he was even saying or what he was talking about, and he marked a lot of those places with just question marks, which in a way that means at the very least he knew where his own shortcomings were with his knowledge on the topic. But because of that, I almost feel like there's no way we could give him a 10 out of 10 because if you don't know what you're talking about and you're writing a book on it, it's a little bit harder to have confidence in what you're saying, and it does make it a little bit more confusing to read overall. So this gets a 7 out of 10 on the ease of reading, and of course just overall is the grammar okay and stuff like that. So adding 4 plus 4 plus 7 and then dividing that, we get 5 out of 10 as the average. And so 5 out of 10 is what this book is getting overall. It is a really okay middle of the road book for the current state. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for someone who wants a complete morph guide, but I do personally find it interesting more from a historical perspective, just to see what people were talking about in 1991. I think that's really interesting. For one, it was the year I was born, so it is cool to see what was going on with corn snakes the year that I was born, but also just as someone who really likes corn snake history, I enjoy kind of seeing what people's perspectives were back then. So now I'm going to go over a few pieces of the actual book and maybe some quotes that I found worth note, sometimes in positive ways, sometimes not so positive ways. He does go through and compare different amel types to each other visually. All of the photos are in color, you can see that. I don't want to show too many actual physical single pages of the book, but at the very least you can get an idea that he does like compare these photos, and I think that that's really good to see. That's one thing that I am striving for in my morph books, to eventually be able to show as many comparisons as possible. He starts out with some general information on corn snakes, which I think is a good thing, except I think that it's a little bit overkill. If someone is buying a corn snake morph guide, they probably already know what a corn snake is. What they really are aiming for is what the actual like morphs are. And so going through, 5 pages of exactly what a corn snake is and what a corn snake looks like, a normal corn snake looks like, it's not that it's completely off topic. I just think that it was too much. I don't think it was really necessary to talk about exactly like what a corn snake is as far as species go, because again, if you are picking up the color guide to corn snakes, you probably already know what a corn snake is. One thing that I did think was really good was he talked about the difference between babies and adults and how the colors change in between those. And I think that when you're doing a morph guide, that is really important, because if you look at a baby normal corn snake, it looks vastly different from an adult normal corn snake. So talking at least a little bit about the differences there, I think is really a positive part of this book. There is a whole section on the subspecies of corn snakes, but again, I already mentioned that these are not subspecies of corn snakes anymore, and so it just kind of put a little X next to it, like this really isn't relevant anymore. And of course, that's part of the reason why the book only got a 5 out of 10 total. I did want to show you guys the Miami phase. So that is what he is calling a Miami phase, and you can see I wrote some like very interesting things at the bottom there. But to me, that is not at all what we would consider a Miami phase now. Normally, when we talk Miami phase, we're talking about an actual silver ground color and not that tan that you see there. Another thing that made this book maybe just a little less credible in my eyes was they talk about melanistic corn snakes, which I would assume are talking about like hypermelanism as opposed to hypomelanism, which is a slightly reduction in melanin. Melanistic, they talk about how these corn snakes can be almost completely black. And I wrote on here, pics or it didn't happen, because there is no photo of a hypermelanistic or a melanistic corn snake, which is what he's calling it in here. And of course, that's very different from anerythristic, which is what's mentioned on the page before that. So he's not talking about anerythristic, which are like gray. He's actually talking about melanistic corn snakes, or perhaps hypermelanistic corn snakes, just because I like to be a little bit more specific with the words that I'm saying and the terminology I'm using. But yeah, we do not have any known hypermelanistic corn snake gene mutations. We do have the chocolate in Emery, which is the Emery's rat snake, and so it could be that he was talking about this chocolate mutation, but again, no photos, so it's hard to say what exactly this is that he's talking about. One other sort of questionable photo that is in this book is actually a picture of a snow that he says has almost no pattern. And when I see this picture, I see a blizzard and not actually a snow. About 8 years prior to this, charcoal had been discovered and had been mixed with a few different things. So I'm not really sure if it's just a really bad photo of a snow, or if they just really weren't 100% sure how to differentiate snows from blizzards at the time. But when I look at this snake, I definitely see a blizzard. Let me know what you think. There is the photo. To me, it definitely looks more like a blizzard than a snow, but I'm interested to get your opinions on that. It is also really interesting in here, and I think in a positive way, where he talks a little bit about alterations to a corn snake's appearance due to incubation stress. And we see this somewhat frequently in breeding. We always get something that looks a little wonky, and we're not really sure how to explain it. But one thing in here is something that we now call wide stripe, and it's not inheritable in the way that something like amelanistic is. However, it is something that we can continue to reproduce through selective breeding. There's also a picture in here of a snake that has really thin saddles, and to me that actually looks like something that you would see in Emery. And since he pretty much considers Emery to be a subspecies of corn snake in this book, it could very well be that what he says is an abnormal looking corn snake is just from Emery influence. It's really hard to tell. Here is the photo of this snake. I thought maybe mask, I put mask question mark there, but it does to me kind of look like an Emery hybrid. It's just really hard to say. In the very back, he talks a little bit about other types of hybrids. So he talks about jungles and he talks about turbos. I don't think he calls it turbos. I think he just calls it the mix of like corn snakes with a gopher snake. But he does mention other hybrids in here, which I think is cool. And at the very back, he talks about how to make a Punnett square and how to use it. And I really thought that that was a really great thing to include. And it is something that I originally intended to include in my morph book and then just kind of never did. It kind of fell to the wayside because my books were more focused on history and not so much the breeding aspect. But I do think that if you're looking to get a really simple and easy explanation of how Punnett squares work, this book would actually be really great. I would almost give this book an extra point just for that. That wouldn't really change like the overall score, but it's still like a really great explanation of how to use Punnett squares if you really wanted to learn how to do that. That's going to be the end of this book review. I really hope that you enjoyed. Remember, if you do want to win a copy of this book, and again, I think that if anybody's trying to learn how to do Punnett squares and you want a free book, this would be a really good book for that. Just leave a comment down below. You can comment pretty much anything. I had a couple people last time comment just here for the free book, so you are welcome to comment anything that you want on this video if you are interested in getting this book for free. And remember to like and subscribe and share this video with anybody who think might be interested in it. I will be doing another one of these next month. I have a whole box worth of corn snake books. Like, you wouldn't hardly believe how many different corn snake books there are to review, and I know that some of these are being sold in pet stores and probably some of them shouldn't be. So please subscribe to stick around for that, and I will see you guys next week for another morph deep dive. I'm going to be redoing the AML types video next week, so I think that will be a really fun video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you then.